Hi, so today we're continuing our exploration into fractions and the fun that we can have with fractions. And we've been learning about how fractions are a part of a whole. So you see there's a couple of things that I've drawn on my whiteboard here. One is a circle and one is a square. So as I take a look at this circle here, I can see that there are four pieces. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's four equal pieces cut in that circle, as equal as I can draw them with my own hand. What you see is that there's also one part of that circle is shaded. So going back to what we've learned about these two words, numerator and denominator, I know that the numerator is the number of pieces that are either shaded or not shaded, depending on what the problem is asking you about. In this case, we're going to call it the number of pieces that are shaded. So in this fraction, the numerator is 1 because I have one piece of my circle that is shaded. The denominator is, let's count them again, let's make sure, 1, 2, 3, 4, because there are four pieces that make up the whole circle. It takes all four of those pieces to make up that whole circle. Now let's take a look at the square. The square looks a little different, doesn't it? The square has four pieces. So again, I could be tempted to say, oh, okay, so there's four pieces and one of them is shaded. The problem is that this piece, as we've learned, these pieces are not all the same size. These two are obviously much bigger than these two. So I can't really say that this is 1/4. I have to kind of cross this out. This is not 1/4. I'd have to do some other things there to check and see how much of that is actually shaded. Okay, we're not going to talk about that today, but this is just a quick review. So the numerator is the number of pieces that I have. The denominator is the number of pieces that it takes to make up the whole thing. Now I'm going to switch your thinking a little bit today. We've been using it with shapes and coloring in parts of shapes or telling how much of the shaded part is, what fraction of the shaded part is colored, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to switch it a little bit today. And we're going to keep working with numerators and denominators. So I'm going to leave those two there. I'm just going to erase the numbers here because we're going to talk about fractions of something else today. And what I want to talk to you about today is the fraction of a set. Now you might be thinking, what do you mean by fraction of a set, Mr. Wendt? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to draw some dots on the board, and I just want you to think about these dots. This is all going to be a set of things, okay? So I'm just going to draw dots because that's really simple to draw. So I'm going to draw some dots here. Okay, so there's some dots there. I'm not done. Okay, so now we're going to call this a set. A set is like a group, and we've talked about groups a lot in math. Groups are a way to put things together, sometimes that are in common, sometimes that are different. Here I've got a set of 6 dots. Now you notice something about the dots though, they're not all the same color, which is good because now we can make a fraction for this set. So let's talk about our words here again, numerator and denominator. The numerator, remember, is the number of something in a set, and the denominator is the number altogether that makes up a set. So I want to ask you a question. I like to start with this bottom number. I want you to tell me, or think about, how many dots are there in the set? So in this one, our denominator is the number of dots that make the set. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the number of dots that make the set. So how many dots are there that make the set? Good. I know a lot of you have now said, oh, Mr. Wendt, I know, there's 6. There's 6 dots that make that set. So that's correct. Let's put a 6 down here. The 6 is my denominator because in the whole set, in that whole set of dots there, I have 6 dots. Okay, so I have 6 dots in that set altogether. Now let's talk about what's the top number. So how do I get my numerator? Well, my numerator could be one of 2 things. There's 2 ways I could look at this. If the question is, how many of the dots in this set are blue, what number would you say? Good. I know a lot of you said 4. That's right. Because there are 4 dots in this set, I could say 4/6 of the dots are blue. Or 4 out of 6 dots are blue in that set. So, does that mean, Mr. Wendt, that I could also give a fraction for the red dots? Absolutely, that's a great question. I could also take a look at that set and say how many of those dots are red. Of course, you all went 2 of them. 2 out of 6 of those dots are red. So, fractions of a set are very similar to fractions of a whole shape. It just depends on what they're asking you for. So today I want you to pay attention when you're doing your work, to pay attention to the question. What is the question asking you? If it's asking you for how many of them are blue, then my answer would not be correct. But if it's asking you for how many of this set are red, you would say 2 out of 6, and that would be correct. Let's try one more example, just quick. Okay, so I'm going to change my fraction here. We're going to mix it up a little bit. I'm just going to erase that whole thing. Okay, there's my fraction line. And my fraction line kind of means this is, another way to think of that, as you've probably heard me say, is out of. So the numerator is the number that I have out of the number total. So let's take a look at a new set. And let's use some new colors. I've got all these fun markers. I'm going to use some new colors. We'll use, okay, I think that's purple. If it's not, don't laugh at me. Remember, Mr. Wendt's colorblind. So I'm going to make some stars this time. Okay, so now I've got some stars up there. I've got some orange stars and some purple stars. And we're going to do some fractions with those stars. So if my question was, how many of the stars in this set are orange? How many of them are orange? Now remember, you should always count the number that there are altogether first. Let's get our denominator first. So how many stars are there in this set? I hope you just said 7, because if you said 7, that would be correct. There are 7 stars in my set. So my denominator is going to be 7. And it doesn't matter what question I ask you next. The denominator will always be 7 because there are 7 stars in my set of data there. So my question then is, how many are orange? Remember, how many of those stars were orange? So you're going to count the orange stars, and I hope that you've already counted and you're shouting out at me on the video. 4! You're right. There are 4 out of 7 stars of that set are orange. 4/7. That's how you would say that. Notice we add the THS for the denominator number. 4/7. Okay? Good. So now, what would you say if I said, how many of those stars are purple? Right. I hope you just yelled out 3/7. 3 out of 7, 3 out of 7 are purple. All right, now it's your turn. I want you to go to the worksheets. I want you to do your best. Show me you understand what a fraction of a set is.